Do this in remembrance of me. Oh, hello there. Do you recognize this scene? This is the Last Supper, so called because it was the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples before his death and resurrection. Let me share this story with you. You can actually find it in all 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It goes like this. Jesus and his disciples were heading to Jerusalem to celebrate the Jewish holidays. And as Jesus entered the city, many people gathered. Even though Jesus rode into the city like a poor man, riding on a humble donkey, people laid down palm branches and coats on the road to welcome him as if he were a great king. They shouted things like,
"Hosanna to the Son of David!
Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord!"
But not all the people were happy to see Jesus was among them. Some of the priests and religious leaders were looking for a clever way to arrest Jesus and stop him from all of his teaching.
Not this guy again. Now he's here.
Eventually, the time came for Jesus to celebrate the Passover meal with his disciples. The Passover was a special Jewish holiday where everyone would remember how God had passed over. This was in reference to how he had saved them from slavery in Egypt. Well, this time, Jesus was instituting a new meal. He said to them, "I have really looked forward to eating this Passover meal with you. I wanted to do this before I suffer. I tell you, I will not eat the Passover meal again until it is celebrated in God's kingdom." That's when Jesus took bread and broke it. He passed it to the disciples, saying, "This is my body, given to you. Every time you eat it, do this in memory of me." In the same way, Jesus took the cup and said, "This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. It is poured out for you." Jesus then warned the disciples that it would be someone there at the table who would betray him, and he would die, just as the scriptures foretold.
Not I, Lord.
No.
Not I, Lord.
What? No.
Me?
After the meal, Jesus and the disciples went to the Mount of Olives, a hill just outside the city. And while Jesus prayed, Judas slid away to betray him to the religious leaders who wanted him dead. That very night, Jesus was arrested. He was brought before the chief priests, who decided that he should be put to death. And in the morning, they sent him to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate.
You say you're a king, do you? King of what? Truth? What is truth? I find nothing wrong with him. I wash my hands of this.
Pilate tried to have Jesus released, but the chief priests and the religious leaders stirred up the crowd and they began chanting. So Pilate ordered the soldiers to take Jesus away and have him put to death. The soldiers took Jesus outside of the city to a hill called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And on that hill, they nailed Jesus to a wooden cross, and he was hung there until he died.
Forgive them, Lord. They know not what they do.
Even though it was the middle of the day, the sky grew dark. The temple curtain was torn in two, and the earth shook. Rocks split in half, and even tombs were opened so that the bodies of many of the dead came back to life and appeared to many of the believers of Jesus. When the Roman soldiers saw the earthquake and everything that happened, they exclaimed, "Surely this was the Son of God." Jesus' body was taken down and placed in a tomb. Pilate ordered a large rock to be placed in front of the tomb and guards to be set around it. On the very first day of the week, some women who were followers of Jesus went to the tomb. And when they arrived, there was another earthquake, and this time an angel appeared. His body shone like lightning, and his clothes were as white as snow. The guards shook so much they became afraid and were like dead men falling to the ground. Then the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified, but he is not here. He has risen, just as he said he would. Come and see the place where he was lying. Go quickly now and tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him."
Come on, we gotta tell the others.
The women, astonished, ran to tell the disciples, and Jesus met them on their way and spoke to them. After a time, Jesus met and spoke with many of the disciples, as well as so many other believers, eating and drinking with them until it was his time to return to the Father. You know, Jesus' body was broken for us. Just like he explained to his disciples at the Passover, he would have to die so that we could live, so that we could have salvation and freedom. Just like the Passover meal represented God's salvation from slavery in Egypt, Jesus was now instituting a new meal that represented our salvation from slavery to sin. Why don't we take a look at our main point one more time? Jesus saves me. Great job.